Welcome to Pop Time Machine, where the past comes alive as if it's unfolding right before your eyes. Today, we invite you to delve into a chilling case titled Footprints in the Field: The Crime That Kept a Village Awake. A fateful morning, a young life lost, and a relentless journey to unmask the killer. Stay tuned, you won't want to miss a moment. This is a gruesome case of rape and murder. Although there was no semen, thanks to the analysis of shoe prints and DNA testing from family members, the police were able to identify the perpetrator. The case highlights the importance of technical expertise and persistence in investigations. Chapter 1: Bloodstained Dawn, May 2010. In the early morning hours, the weather in Hue was still tinged with a lingering chill. A thin veil of mist, like a sheer white scarf, lay gently over the rice fields of Tanhoa Village, Fulak District. It was just past 5 a.m. The sun had yet to rise, and villagers were beginning their daily routines, some heading to the fields, others preparing to carry goods to the market. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the calm of the countryside. An elderly woman gathering wild herbs near the edge of a rice paddy collapsed to the ground. Before her lay a horrifying sight: the lifeless body of a young girl, sprawled at the edge of the field, her hair in disarray, clothes rumpled, and her left hand loosely clutching a small uprooted bunch of weeds. The dreadful news spread like wildfire across the village. Within 15 minutes, nearly the entire village of Tanhoa had gathered around the scene. Some trembled, others wept silently. The victim was identified as Nguyen Thi Mai, a 7th grade student at Fulak Secondary School No. 2. Mai was known as a kind, studious girl from a poor family. Every day, she walked more than 5 kilometers to school. To be on time for her 7 a.m. classes, she always left home at 4:15 a.m., trekking through a narrow dirt path, crossing an old wooden bridge, and walking through the empty fields. But this morning, she would never make it to class. The scene was cordoned off immediately. Mai's body lay on its side, her face still bearing traces of terror. Her clothes were disheveled, yet there were no signs of sexual assault, a detail that made the case all the more perplexing. A long bruise stretched across her neck, suggesting she had been strangled. There were no stab wounds, no evidence of blunt force trauma. The killer had acted with disturbing control. A special investigation unit from the Thua Tien Hui Provincial Police was dispatched later that morning. Leading the team was Lieutenant Colonel Trin Dui Nam, a seasoned investigator known for cracking major cases in the mountainous Aluoi region. Standing silently before Mai's body, he clasped his hands behind his back, his gaze sharp. "This isn't a random outburst of violence," he said quietly. "There's something deeply strange and frightening hidden behind this child's death." The village buzzed with rumors. Some speculated a drug addict was behind it. Others whispered superstitions. Could it be a haunting? That field was once a battlefield, But the police didn't believe in ghosts. They believed in evidence. And the first clue was a footprint. Chapter 2: The Mysterious Footprints. That afternoon, the forensic team began meticulously scanning the crime scene. Although many villagers had already trampled over parts of the area, the eastern edge of the rice paddy, where few had ventured, still held clear impressions of 2 sets of footprints stretching from the old wooden bridge to where the victim lay. 2 trails, one small, one large, walking side by side. But near the end, only the larger footprints turned back toward the bridge. Investigators carefully measured each step. The smaller prints matched a size 35 shoe, consistent with Mai's footwear. The larger prints were a size 40, made by soft rubber shoes commonly worn by local farmers. One particularly deep impression sunk noticeably into the damp soil, suggesting the person weighed around 60 to 65 kilograms and stood approximately 1.68 meters tall. They also measured the distance between steps. The stride was even and steady. This indicated the killer wasn't fleeing in panic after the act. He walked away calmly, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. "This person is definitely a manual laborer," one forensic expert concluded. "He has muscle tone, is used to walking long distances. This wasn't an amateur." The deeper they investigated, the stranger the case became. There were no witnesses, no cries for help. No one reported hearing anything suspicious around 4 a.m. that morning. Some villagers recalled seeing a man in an old jacket passing through the field the night before, but no one could describe his face. A few young men insisted there haven't been any strangers in the area. And if the killer lives here, why would he risk acting in such an open place? The police began combing through lists of people who might be connected: neighbors, teachers, even those with prior criminal records. Several individuals were brought in for questioning, but none raised serious suspicion. That was until a small detail came to light: a strange smear of dried mud on Mai's sleeve. This patch of mud didn't match the soil at the crime scene. It had a reddish hue, almost clay-like, typical of the earth found near the Melaleuca forest, about 600 meters from where Mai's body was discovered. Why was there red soil on her sleeve? Could it be that Mai had been taken around that area? Was the actual murder committed somewhere else? The investigation team widened their search perimeter. A small group of officers quietly returned to the Melaleuca Grove, carefully following bent grass and faint, broken paths that only seasoned trackers might notice. Then they found something that chilled them to the bone: a thin rope abandoned at the base of a Melaleuca tree, next to a blood-stained piece of a schoolgirl's handkerchief. No one said a word. They just looked at each other, and then turned their gaze back toward the village. A killer was still among them. Calm, undetected, and worse, he might strike again. Chapter 3. The First Suspect. On the afternoon of the second day after Nguyen Thi Mai's body was discovered, the small meeting room at the Tan Hoa Commune police station was heavy with tension. Photos of the crime scene, footprint diagrams, and preliminary forensic results plastered one entire wall. Investigator Dui Nam stood silently, his eyes fixed on a single photo: the large shoe print clearly imprinted on the wet ground near the wooden bridge. "Have we found anyone with size 40 shoes yet?" Dui Nam broke the silence. "Yes, there's one person, Trun Van Hung," reported the local officer. "He's 32, a construction laborer, lives alone. According to the neighborhood watch, he owns 2 pairs of sneakers similar to those found at the scene. He often leaves early and returns late. Nobody really knows where he goes." Immediately, Dui Nam underlined the name Trun Van Hung on the suspect list. Hung lived at the edge of the village in a rundown one-story house with peeling walls and a warped iron door. When the team arrived, he was sitting alone on the porch, smoking, his gaunt face revealing nothing but a cold, unyielding gaze. "I don't know anything about that case," Hung said when questioned. "I've been working as a construction laborer in Locan Commune the past few days. I only got home this morning. You can check with the contractor." Dui Nam noticed a fresh scratch on Hung's hand, a minor detail, but enough to raise his suspicions. During the house search, police found 2 pairs of black sneakers, common types but matching the size and sole pattern of the prints at the scene. One pair was covered in dried mud, the other still damp as if recently washed, neatly placed on a rack. "Why are the shoes still wet?" Dui Nam asked. Hung shrugged and answered curtly, "I washed them." Dui Nam didn't press further. His gaze flicked to the bathroom, where a neatly arranged blue toothbrush lay. He signaled for technicians to collect samples for DNA testing. The next day, the investigation team went to the contractor in Loc An. The middle-aged man confirmed Hung had worked there from the night of the 16th until early morning of the 17th, but left around 3 a.m., saying he had family matters to attend to. This departure time matched the window when Mai disappeared. Moreover, some villagers reported seeing Hung wandering near the rice fields a few days before the murder. Small pieces of information began forming a blurry but suspicious picture. Back at the commune office, Hung was summoned for a second interview. "Do you know Nguyen Thi Mai?" Dui Nam asked. "No, I don't pay attention to little girls," Hung replied. "Where were you after 3 a.m. that morning?" "I went home and slept." "Anyone to confirm that?" "No one." Hung's cold and stubborn tone frustrated many officers, but Dui Nam remained calm. His intuition told him this man was hiding something, though there wasn't enough evidence to charge him yet. Only DNA results could break this troubling silence. 3 days later, the forensic lab sent the test results. Dui Nam opened the envelope with the whole team watching anxiously. The conclusion: DNA from Trun Van Hung's toothbrush did not match the DNA extracted from the hair found on Nguyen Thi Mai. The room fell silent. Some sighed, others looked disappointed. Hung was eliminated as the primary suspect, but Dui Nam wasn't convinced of his innocence. Folding his arms, he said slowly, "That doesn't mean he's innocent. He might not have left DNA, but he could still be an accomplice. Another possibility is the hair doesn't belong to the killer. The case remained a labyrinth full of unexpected dead ends. Trun Van Hung had shoes like the killer's, a suspicious time gap, had been near the scene, and clearly was hiding something. But without concrete proof, it was all just suspicion. That night, Duinam stayed awake, spreading out all the files, reviewing every tiny detail. Exhaustion crept over him, but his eyes remained sharp as blades. The killer was still at large, and he knew the silence of those lurking in the shadows was often more dangerous than any words. Meanwhile, on the other side of the village, under the cover of darkness, the real murderer could be silently watching every move of the investigation, smiling at each dead end they hit. Chapter 4. A New Lead. 10 days had passed since Nguyen Mai's body was discovered. The case showed no clear progress. Every morning, the villagers of Tân Hoa still saw investigator Duinam walking through the village, notebook in hand, eyes sharp like a hawk, recording every testimony, every shadow, every tiny trace that ordinary people might overlook. But the more he searched, the case felt like a dense, dark forest. The culprit, who had brutally killed an innocent little girl, still had not revealed themselves. Duinam felt as if he were chasing a cunning fox, clever, cold, and extremely patient. One morning, while sitting in a small watchtower by the fields, sipping cold tea and reviewing the crime scene diagram, Duinam received a call from the Provincial Criminal Records Office. "We've just received a notification from the regional surveillance system. There is a man named Lê Văn Thăng, 38 years old, with a prior conviction for sexual assault, who recently returned and has been living in Tân Hoa Commune for about a month. His temporary residence registration is not yet updated. He's staying at his elder sister's house near the edge of the Khai Meat forest." Duinam gripped the phone tightly. The name Lê Văn Thăng was immediately underlined heavily in his investigation notebook. Thăng had been a thorn in the police's side nearly 10 years ago. He served 5 years in prison for raping a female lottery ticket seller in another province. After release, he drifted without stable work. Recently, he had returned to his hometown to lie low. Notably, his sister's house was less than 400 meters from the wooden bridge where the shoe prints were found. He lived quietly, without registering temporary residence, nearly invisible to local authorities. That very afternoon, the task force covertly approached the area near Thang's sister's home. The simple one-story house was surrounded by dense banana bushes. Neighbors reported that Thang often left very early, around 3 a.m. Some days he walked along the fields, others he climbed the embankment to sit and smoke. A shiver ran down Duinam's spine. Every detail matched the time and location of Mai's disappearance. When summoned, Lê Văn Thăng appeared nervous but tried to stay calm. He wore a worn t-shirt, his hands veiny and rough, eyes cunning. "I'm not involved in that girl's death. I have a bad past, but now I just want to live quietly. I didn't go out that night," Thăng declared. "Anyone to confirm that?" Duinam asked. "No, I live alone. My sister went to the market early morning." His testimony was no different from Hung's. Alone, no alibi, no witnesses, except that Thăng had a history of sexual crimes. The police collected Thang's DNA sample and conducted a preliminary search of his place. Nothing suspicious was found. No shoes matching the prints, no dirty clothes, no signs of a struggle. However, during a re-examination of evidence from the scene, forensic technicians discovered a long, thin hair stuck inside the collar of Mai's shirt, an overlooked, very private spot. Duinam decided to send that hair for DNA testing alongside Thang's sample. 4 days later, the forensic department sent back the results. Everyone waited tensely. The conclusion: Lê Văn Thang's DNA did not match the DNA from the hair found on the victim. The atmosphere collapsed. Once again, all hope fell into a void. Duinam sat quietly for a long time, then slowly said, "This time, I believe that hair belongs to the killer. Its position is too hidden to be a coincidence." One officer spoke up. "So both Hung and Thang don't match the DNA, but many other details coincide. Is it possible that the killer's DNA sample we initially collected was wrong?" Duinam suddenly turned to the forensic technician. "What was Hung's DNA sample taken from?" "A toothbrush." He gritted his teeth. "Who confirmed it was Hung's toothbrush?" "The neighbor said it was the toothbrush Hung usually used." Duinam jumped up. A chilling suspicion crept in. What if it wasn't really Hung's toothbrush? What if the original DNA sample was incorrect? Could it be the entire investigation was heading in the wrong direction? Chapter 5, A Turning Point. That afternoon, in the office of Fulok District Police, investigator Duinam sat alone before the case board, his tense eyes scanning each piece of paper meticulously pinned with red thumbtacks. The name Trun Van Hung still occupied the center, circled in orange, prime suspect number 1, but now crossed out due to the DNA mismatch. Yet, now, Duinam was no longer certain. A small mistake during sample collection, enough to derail the entire investigation. A toothbrush, a personal item. But how could they be sure it belonged to Hung? The provider was a neighbor, not a family member. The police had never seen Hung use it directly. In fact, he had been absent for a whole week at that time. Duinam stood up and said to the head of the criminal team, "I want to start over. This time, we must collect samples from Hung's close blood relatives. If not him, then from his child." The team exchanged doubtful looks, but everyone understood. The case had reached an impasse. There was no choice but to patiently retrace every step. After verification, Hung had an 8-year-old son named Trun Min Nyut, living with his mother, Ngothi Hua, Hung's ex-wife, in Dongmi village, about 6 kilometers from Tanhua. At first, Miss Hua hesitated, but after thorough explanation, she agreed to let the investigators collect a blood sample from Little Nut for indirect DNA analysis through their blood relationship. The killer's hair sample, still preserved under special conditions, was compared against Nut's blood sample under extremely strict forensic protocols. For 3 days after, the whole team felt like sitting on a powder keg. On the afternoon of the 4th day, official results from the Provincial Forensic Department arrived. Duinam took the envelope, his hand slightly trembling. He opened it and slowly read every line. Conclusion. The hair collected from the collar of victim Winthi Mai matched the DNA structure of Trun Min Nyut within a father-son blood relation. The room fell completely silent. No one spoke. Duinam quietly nodded, then looked at the team. Trun Van Hung is the culprit. Now, everything suddenly became clear. The footprints at the scene, size 40, matched the shoes Hung usually wore. The height records, 1.68 meters. A casual laborer, frequently absent from home with irregular movements. The cut on Hung's palm mentioned by neighbors, now possibly a mark from struggling with the victim. He had been in the police's hands before, but all had slipped away because of a wrong toothbrush. That very night, the nationwide arrest warrant for Trun Van Hung was reissued and escalated to urgent status. The task force was immediately deployed. Information from the commune police revealed that Hung had worked at a construction site near Chunmei Port, but had quit 2 months ago. Locals occasionally saw him appear at Dongba Market, wearing old work clothes, buying single cigarettes, then disappearing swiftly like the wind. He might be hiding nearby, in familiar territory. From this information, Duinam arranged ambushes at market spots, bus stations, cheap boarding houses, roadside eateries, places Hung might visit. A local resident accidentally provided another valuable detail. Hung often slept under the Phu Cam railway bridge, where he used to roam after drinking. At dawn the next day, a task force approached the bridge's underpass, checking every crevice, every bush. Just as expected, in a dark nook under the bridge abutment, they found a man curled up asleep in a thick jacket. It was Hung. He was arrested on the spot. No resistance, no struggle. Duinam looked straight into those dull eyes and said, "Do you have anything to say?" Hung was silent for a long moment, then nodded slightly, mumbling, "Give me a cigarette, please." Chapter 6, Confession in the Darkness. In the interrogation room at the Fulok District Police Headquarters, Trun Van Hung sat silently on a chair, his wrists handcuffed to the cold stainless steel table. A dim yellow light cast a soft glow on his gaunt face, where his eyes remained downcast, avoiding the gaze of the investigators. Duinam entered, carrying a thick file. He didn't rush, gently sat down opposite Hung, placed the file on the table, then pushed several photos toward him. The crime scene, the shoes, the footprints, and the DNA test results. "We have enough evidence now," Duinam said calmly. "Both the hair and your son's DNA match. If you still have any conscience left, you should tell the whole truth." Hung looked up, meeting the investigator's eyes for the first time. He showed no anger, no panic, just a tired, resigned, and bitter look. He gave a dry, hollow laugh, like the wind trapped in a rocky crevice. I knew this day would come. Then he began to speak. On the night of May 27th into the early morning of May 28th, the weather was damp and humid, and the wooden bridge across the fields was still covered in dew. Hung was drunk, having just argued with his supervisor at the construction site in Loc Tien, so he wandered through several villages. He stopped by a familiar grocery store to buy 2 small packs of rice wine, then climbed up to sleep rough on the railway bridge's loft, a place where he had often taken shelter before. Around 4 a.m., he was awakened by steady footsteps echoing on the wooden planks. Peering through the iron bars, Hung saw a small figure carrying a school bag, walking alone. That was Mai. Still drunk and with a troubled mind, a wild thought came to him. He crept along the edge of the field, cut through a footpath, then waited at a hidden corner behind an old bamboo thicket. I didn't mean to kill her, Hung whispered. I thought I'd scare her a little, tease her, then stop. But when Mai came close, he suddenly lunged out, covered her mouth, and dragged her into the bushes. The girl struggled fiercely, kicking him in the stomach, scratching his face with her nails. Hung was knocked down onto the grass, overwhelmed by a sudden bestial rage, and used both hands to strangle her. I just wanted her to be quiet. I didn't think that she would actually stop breathing. When he realized Mai's body had gone limp, her eyes wide open, staring blankly, Hung snapped back to reality. Fearful and trembling, he sat down on the ground, holding his head. After a few minutes, he dragged Mai's body out of the path to the edge of the rice field, then ran away toward the village dike. On the way, he dropped a cloth glove stained with a few strands of hair from the victim's collar. After that, he went into hiding, never returned home, living secretly on construction sites, using fake names, and avoiding any contact with anyone. I never meant to run forever, Hung mumbled. I was just waiting for someone to find out, then come and arrest me. Every night, I hear her crying. In my mind, she's still wearing her school uniform, her hair tied in 2 pigtails. No one in the room spoke. The whole space was heavy with an unspeakable sorrow. Duinam exhaled softly. He looked at the man before him, a murderer, a father, a coward running away from his own conscience, then closed the file. We will file charges for child sexual assault causing death. The court will apply the highest penalty. Hung showed no reaction. He only bowed his head, his hands trembling. That evening, the local news broadcast announced the case of little Winthit Mai had been solved. People in Tanhua gathered to watch in silence. Some women wept. A few old men shook their heads and sighed. At Mai's home, her parents sat beside her altar, flickering candlelight illuminating their faces. The mother gently stroked her daughter's photo, tears wetting her hand. The case, which seemed destined to be forgotten, was solved thanks to persistence, DNA forensic technology, and the keen insight of the investigation team. It served as a warning to those who think the darkness can forever hide their crimes. Because justice may come late, but it will never lose its way. Chapter 7. The End and Reflection. The day Trun Van Hung stood trial at the People's Court of Phuluk District drew a large crowd of local residents. Although the case had been thoroughly investigated, with the truth laid bare through every testimony and irrefutable evidence, no one in the courtroom could hold back tears while hearing the heartbreaking story of little Mai. The trial was not only a judgment of a serious criminal, but also an occasion for the community to reflect on moral values, mutual protection, and support, especially for the future generation, the children who deserve to be safeguarded with all the love and strictness of the law. In the days following the trial, the atmosphere in Tanhua village grew quieter than ever before. The adults began organizing meetings to share and warn one another about childcare, reminding each other never to be careless, no matter the circumstances. Duinam, the lead investigator in the case, regularly visited the victim's family. He knew that the loss Mai's parents suffered could never be compensated, but at least justice had been served, and Mai's story would become a profound lesson for the whole community. One afternoon, as golden sunlight stretched across the lush green rice fields, Mai's mother stood by her daughter's grave. Her eyes filled with tears, but her gaze resolute. She whispered quietly to her daughter's image in her heart. My child, I know you will always be by our side, watching every step I and everyone in this village take. I will not let you or any other children suffer the pain you endured. My story was not just a personal tragedy, but a wake-up call for society. It reminded everyone that to prevent such horrors, families, schools, and communities must unite in protecting, educating, and caring for children. The story also proved the necessity of science and technology in investigations, from footprint analysis to DNA testing. All these modern methods helped bring justice to light, even in cases that once seemed hopeless. In the end, though Mai has passed away, her memory lives on in the hearts of the people of Tanhua. The roads, the wooden bridges, and the rice fields continue to witness generation after generation growing up under more protection and love than ever before. And this story reminds us, even when darkness falls for a while, the light of truth and justice will always shine through, guiding us forward. Thank you for listening to this story. Always love and protect your loved ones, especially the children, the future seeds of the nation. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to the Pop Time Machine channel to hear more fascinating stories. Goodbye, and see you again.